They never told you the truth. Avoidants don't walk away because their feelings died. They walk away because their feelings got too real, and they weren't built to handle someone who mattered that much. But here's the twist most people never figure out. When an avoidant bonds, it's once, it's deep, and it brands them. No matter how far they run, no matter how silent they go, no matter how over it they pretend to be, there is always one person they stay loyal to, even if they leave that person behind. And if you were that person, you already know it in your bones. Section 1. The myth. Avoidants don't care. Let's destroy the biggest lie people believe about avoidants. That they're cold, emotionless, unavailable, and incapable of real attachment. That's nonsense. Avoidants aren't emotionless. They're overwhelmed. They're not heartless. They're hyper-guarded. They don't care less. They care too much, and that's the real problem. The more an avoidant feels, the more threatened they become. Not threatened by you, but threatened by their own loss of control. Because deep attachment activates everything they've been avoiding their entire life. The fear of depending on someone, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of needing love, the fear of losing themselves inside a relationship. They've spent years building a self-protection system so rigid that real intimacy feels like danger. So when they finally meet a person who reaches that buried emotional core, they don't know how to handle the intensity. They don't know how to stay. They don't know how to receive. So what do? They pull away from the exact person they're loyal to. Twisted? Absolutely. But psychological? 100%. Section 2. Why one person gets under their skin. Avoidants don't connect easily. They don't bond casually. They don't fall in love every few months like anxious or secure types. It takes a lot for someone to pierce their emotional armor. But once it happens, once someone triggers that rare attachment, the avoidant's internal world shifts permanently. Because this person becomes the only one they ever allowed close, the only one who truly saw them, the only one they emotionally opened up to, the only one who touched their inner fears, the only one who made them feel safe enough. Avoidants don't forget that kind of connection. Their brain literally tags that person as the emotional blueprint. This is why avoidants can leave, but still feel tied to one person for years. Their loyalty isn't about presence. It's about imprint. And an avoidant only imprints once, maybe twice in a lifetime. Everyone after that? Temporary. Shallow. Surface level. A distraction. A decoy. But the one they imprinted on? That person becomes the emotional reference point for everything. Section 3. Why they leave the person they're loyal to. Here's where it gets messy, contradictory, and brutally honest. Avoidants leave the person they love most. Why? Because deep connection triggers fear of losing identity, fear of being controlled, fear of emotional dependence, fear of abandonment if they get too close. Love doesn't scare them. Losing themselves inside love does. So when the relationship reaches that point where emotional commitment is required, they panic. And instead of leaning in like a secure person, they retreat, disconnect, and shut down. Not because the connection is weak, but because it's too strong. Not because they're over you, but because they're overwhelmed by you. Not because they don't want closeness, but because closeness feels like danger. So they leave the one person they actually want. And here's the part most people never understand. Avoidants walk away from the relationship, but they don't walk away from the bond. The bond stays. The loyalty stays. The emotional imprint stays. Even if they run. Even if they ghost. Even if they date someone else. Even if they pretend they don't care. They're loyal to the person they left. Because that's the only person they were ever truly attached to. Section 4. Why avoidants stay emotionally loyal even after distance. Avoidants don't form new deep bonds easily after leaving someone significant. In fact, they rarely replace that original attachment at all. Here's the psychological reason. When an avoidant finally lets someone in, truly in, it overrides their default programming. Their brain shifts out of a protective, detached mode and into something they never fully understood before. Real emotional intimacy. That level of intimacy becomes a reference point, not a repeatable event. So even when they move on physically, emotionally, they're stuck in an old loop. This is why they compare everyone new to the person they left, feel emotionally flat in new relationships, crave the safety they once had but won't admit, stay suspiciously unavailable with everyone else, feel a permanent internal pull toward one specific person. Avoidants don't lose interest after leaving. They lose capacity for that depth with anyone else. Because that first deep connection wasn't casual, it was foundational. And foundations don't get rebuilt every few months. They get built once. Section 5. Their loyalty isn't romantic, it's structural. Here's the part everyone misunderstands. Avoidants aren't loyal to one person because of sentimental fantasy. They're loyal because their attachment system reorganizes itself around the person who broke through their emotional defenses. This is structural loyalty, meaning that person becomes emotionally irreplaceable. Their brain stores the connection as the safest experience. Their nervous system regulates better around that one person. Their vulnerability threshold is highest with that person. Their trust levels peak with that person and never reach that level again. That loyalty is not romantic devotion. It's biological programming. This is why avoidants often look confusing. They can date someone new. They can say they've moved on. They can act detached. They can appear unaffected. But the moment the original attachment resurfaces, even subtly, everything rearranges inside them. Emotions they thought were gone return. Suppressed memories replay. Their defenses weaken. Their desire to reconnect hits them out of nowhere. Their carefully built emotional distance collapses. Avoidants don't get over the person they were loyal to. They store that person inside them like a locked file that never gets deleted. Section 6. Why their loyalty survives separation. Distance doesn't kill an avoidance attachment. It feeds it. Avoidants associate closeness with danger and distance with safety. So the moment they leave, they think they're regaining control, strength, and balance. But here's the psychological twist. Distance removes their panic, but not their attachment. When they step away from you, it does not reset their feelings. It only resets their fear, and when fear is no longer overwhelming them, the attachment resurfaces. Stronger. This is why avoidants often experience delayed feelings, late realizations, sudden longing months or years later, unexpected emotional flashbacks, guilt, confusion, nostalgia, a sense of missing something they can't replace. Separation is not emotional freedom for an avoidant. It's delayed clarity. And that clarity usually hits them when they're finally alone with themselves. When there's no distraction, no escape, no one else to blame, no emotional overwhelm. Just the truth they've been dodging. They lost the only person they ever felt safe enough to attach to. Section 7. Why they rarely recreate that bond. Avoidants don't form deep, lasting attachments repeatedly. Their emotional systems aren't flexible like secure types or intense like anxious types. They bond slowly, reluctantly, painfully, and rarely. Once it happens, the template is set. Every connection after that feels less intense, less meaningful, less safe, less familiar, less home-like. This is why they often look unavailable in every new relationship. They're not avoiding intimacy in general. They're avoiding intimacy that doesn't feel like you. Avoidants don't build multiple emotional homes. They build one. And if they leave it, they spend the rest of their life visiting the ruins. Section 8. The moment they leave is not the moment they let go. Avoidants don't emotionally detach when they walk away. That's just the moment their fear wins, not the moment their feelings die. When they leave, they're not thinking, "I'm done. I don't care anymore. This connection is over." They're thinking, "I'm overwhelmed. I'm losing control. I can't handle this level of closeness. I need distance to breathe." This misunderstanding is where most people get hurt. You assume their exit means the attachment broke. In reality, their exit is a self-defense maneuver, nothing more. Avoidants don't end emotional bonds when they leave. They just run from the intensity they can't regulate. And ironically, The moment they leave is the moment the attachment becomes permanent, because they finally feel the quiet, the clarity, the emotional space. And in that space, the truth hits them. They weren't running from you. They were running from themselves. Section 9. Why they stay emotionally bound long after you move on. Avoidants don't replace people. They replace situations. They don't look for another person who feels like you. They look for another setup where they don't have to confront vulnerability. That means even if they date again, the connection is surface level. Convenient. Emotionally safe. Low investment. Low depth. And that's exactly why you stay psychologically the one you represented. Emotional intimacy. Genuine connection. Vulnerability. Truth. Safety. Transparency. Reality. The new person only represents routine, distraction, numbness, distance, control, emotional autopilot. Avoidants don't get attached to people who require no emotional courage. They simply coexist with them. Meanwhile, the memory of someone who reached their inner core stays untouched. Not because they're nostalgic, but because nothing else hits that depth. That's why their attachment to you survives. Time, silence, separation, new relationships, new environments. Life changes. Avoidants don't emotionally move on. They emotionally pause. And the moment anything triggers that memory, the attachment unfreezes. Section 10. The silent loyalty they'll never admit. Avoidants won't come forward and say it out loud, but they remain loyal to one person for life. Not by choice, but by psychological design. Their attachment system bonds only once at the deepest level. After that, nobody else fits the emotional imprint. They can be with someone new. They can pretend they're fine. They can act indifferent. But deep down, their loyalty stays anchored to the person who understood them, the person who didn't push, the person who saw their walls but still cared, the person who reached the emotional version of them that nobody else ever got to see. Avoidants don't forget emotional safety. They cling to it silently. And that's why they stay loyal even after they leave, because they only felt emotionally at home once, and no matter where they go, nothing replicates that inner blueprint. Section 11. Why they come back even when they're not ready. Avoidants don't return because they suddenly changed. They return because distance stops numbing their feelings. When they first pull away, they feel relief. Relief from pressure. Relief from emotional intensity. Relief from vulnerability. But relief fades. And what replaces it is something they're terrible at handling. Missing someone. Real missing. Deep missing. The kind that hits in quiet moments. Late at night, during emotional stress. When the world gets too loud. When something reminds them of the past. When they finally have time to think. Avoidants aren't built to handle emotional absence. They're built to handle emotional control. So when distance feels like control, they stay away. But when distance turns into emptiness, they panic. And that's when they come back. A random message, a subtle check-in, a meaningless excuse, a sudden concern, a tiny breadcrumb of connection. Not because they're ready for closeness, but because they're terrified of completely losing the one bond that ever felt real. Their return has nothing to do with courage, and everything to do with fear. Fear of losing the only genuine emotional anchor they ever had. Section 12. Why they never form a deeper bond with anyone else. Avoidants may date again. They may even appear happy. But the truth is simple. They don't form deep emotional bonds twice, because they don't allow themselves to. They structure new connections in a way that prevents vulnerability. They keep it light. They avoid emotional depth. They maintain control. They avoid real intimacy. They stay mentally detached. New partners may think things are going well, but they're not forming a true bond. They're forming a pattern. Avoidants don't recreate emotional intimacy. They recreate emotional safety. And emotional safety to an avoidant means, I don't have to feel too much here. That's why nobody new gets their heart. Nobody new gets their emotional truth. Nobody new gets the version of them that connected with you. You were the exception, not the template. New relationships for them are maintenance, routine, stability, emotional autopilot, surface level attachment, not emotional home. They only found emotional home once, and that's why no one else ever reaches that depth. SECTIO and 30. Why you become the one they never stop thinking about. Avoidants don't obsess over people. They obsess over emotional imprints. And you left an imprint they can't escape. The imprint of being understood, being seen, being accepted, being emotionally safe, being loved without pressure, being cared for without control, being free yet connected. It's rare, it's powerful, and it's unforgettable. Avoidants don't reminisce over every connection. They reminisce over the one connection that felt safe enough to be real. That's why you become the person they compare everyone else to, not consciously, but emotionally. Every time they meet someone new, something feels off, too shallow, too surface level, too distant, too forced, because they already experienced something deeper, and the deeper experience always wins psychologically. Avoidants don't chase depth, but they don't forget it either. That's why you become the unresolved story in their life. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. Section 14. The deepest truth. They didn't leave because they didn't care. Avoidants don't walk away to escape you. They walk away to escape their feelings. And here's the hard, unromantic truth. Deep feelings overwhelm them. Intimacy threatens their sense of independence. Connection makes them feel out of control. Love activates their deepest fear. If I depend on someone, I can lose myself. So when an avoidant feels the connection getting too real, they do exactly what their system is wired to do. They pull back. They detach. They convince themselves the bond wasn't that deep. They suppress the intensity. They disappear into their inner world. Leaving was never about a lack of care. It was about emotional survival. Avoidants run from depth, not from you. But ironically, the deeper the bond, the harder they run, and the more they run, the more they prove one thing about you: you mattered.